All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Rakugo, Season 1, Episode 12. All right, so Miyukichi now knows that Yakumo is here.
Yep.
Bon, her ex-lover, he is going to be performing with Sukeroku.
Right. And she doesn't really
to be there, it seems.
Right, but she doesn't really seem to care or almost even notice that Sukeroku is going to be there as well.
Yeah, she's there for a very specific encounter of sorts. And what actually that encounter will entail is going to be telling, because as we're nearing the finale of Season 1, it behooves us to remind y'all and ourselves that Sukeroku's still alive.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
Yeah, I guess we'll find out how close to our theories this finale will end up being.
Right.
I would say that this is going to be the final bit of Rakugo that Yakumo and Sukeroku will get to do
probably
with each other.
Yep.
Which is, that's a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, we get to also maybe see things through the eyes of Konatsu. That could be a wholesome, wonderful thing.
This is going to suck. It's going to be great, but it's going to suck.
So, y'all, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, everyone, be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, and then come back here for the discussion. All right. Well,
okay.
Yeah. That was their last bit of Rakugo together.
Yeah.
That was not how I expected it to go.
Me neither.
This was something that called back, it seems, to multiple moments in Rakugo, almost as if the Rakugo that certain characters gave led up to this moment.
Yeah, like the whole bit of like the double suicides that were brought up several times, among other things.
Yeah, so it's not just Sukeroku, it's Miyokichi as well. Now they could go with a thing where Miyokichi ends up living due to whatever, but I think she's dead.
Yeah. It's weird because this is something that we knew was going to happen. That Sukeroku was going to die, right?
Right.
And they'd been building up to it plenty.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a part of me that doesn't feel sad in a way, because the way this happened, not from the standpoint of Sukeroku dying,
right,
but from the standpoint of the growth of the characters leading up to that, was a true happy ending.
Yeah.
Right? They were all able to reconcile the conflicts and the struggles that they had, and they were able to change. And based on how they were acting, it seemed like it was a true change, right? Even though we didn't actually see the change get followed through on, those seemed like decisions that ran deep, right?
Yeah.
But they're dead now.
Yeah. And I can kind of see why now Konatsu is going to blame Yakumo and why he doesn't really deserve any of the blame, and yet he's totally going to blame himself for this.
Right.
Because it was his going to see Miyokichi. It was his idea for them to do Rakugo.
Yep.
It was him who came to this small town to save Sukeroku, and because of that,
right. And that's the thing. He did save him. He did save him. Yeah. And I guess this recontextualizes the kind of conflicts that we'll probably have in season 2, because Yakumo made mistakes. He definitely made mistakes. But he accepted the fact that he made mistakes. And so did Sukeroku. So now all that's left, really, other than maybe regret that you made those mistakes in the first place, is grief over the fact that Sukeroku's dead, and then some reconciliation with Konatsu, maybe, because she obviously will blame him for this, right?
Yeah.
But it's interesting because where I thought it was going to go is that Sukeroku wouldn't be able to make that choice.
Right.
He wouldn't be able to change. Yeah. And that's where it would be the Greek tragedy, where there'd be the fatal flaw, and Yakumo would do everything he could, and Sukeroku would even do everything he could, but there would be some part of him that would hold on, and he would die because of it, right? Yeah. And then in the present day time in season 2, it would be something where with Yotaro, it'd be, will he go the same path, right? Yeah. Will history repeat itself again, or can things be different this time? Sure. And while that's still definitely there, because things can be different this time, because it was the decisions that the characters made that got them into the situation, the actual final ending of Sukeroku dying wasn't something that, I mean, he did decide it once he was in that situation, but he didn't really decide it in a lot of ways. Even Miyokichi didn't really decide it. She had the part where she wanted her and Yakumo to die together, but when she finally fell, that wasn't intentional, right?
Right.
It was something where they were on a rickety outcropping of the inn,
Yeah.
And it wasn't enough to support what was happening, right?
Yeah.
So in that sense, it almost feels, the death feels cold. Because yes, it's indirectly because of their decisions, but it's not, but it's several levels of indirection, right?
Yeah.
So, it's something that didn't have to happen. It's a very unfortunate accident, but yeah.
Yeah. And yet, this whole thing with Miyokichi doing this, you realize how much of this was her, realizing okay, now this is it. Let's have our moment. This is my revenge.
Oh yeah.
So she was intentionally going to do this the whole time.
Well, yes, but I think only if she could get Yakumo to accept her in that moment, and then that was going to be the way that she would make it permanent.
Right.
In a lot of ways, maybe the way that Yakumo will blame himself is because he did accept her at the end. And that's when she said, let's die together.
Yeah.
And that maybe if he hadn't done that, right, then it would have worked out okay.
Well, right. Anyone in this situation, specifically Yakumo, because he has the most, I would say, influence in the way things generally go, because he's actually the most proactive character. At least in the current moment.
Right.
Here.
His actions have a bigger impact on what the others do.
Yes.
It doesn't go the other way around.
Right. So what that means is that essentially if he did a couple things differently, it would have gone differently. But that doesn't mean necessarily that, they wouldn't have died or anything like that. It just would have changed things, and we can never know what would have happened.
Yeah.
I am upset in the standpoint that this is a painful death for a character that was really good, and in some ways the nature of the drama in this show is one that is entirely character driven. It has these really powerful moments, but there are these other moments where you kind of see the drama being built up, so perfectly for specific big moments, and then those big moments come, and sometimes they actually don't have all the how do I say this? All the emotional beats. If anything, they'll happen so quickly. You'll be like, oh, the compactness of that little scene right there has so much emotion behind it. But actually, the points at which I enjoy Rakugo the most, this show, is after I've actually seen all of it, and I get to process it later.
Yeah,
because I'm looking at little things like when Matsuda comes back. And he's just had the moment where he caught the
sticks or whatever,
the chopsticks, and I'm like, that is the most blatant foreshadowing.
Oh yeah.
No, it's obvious to see now, but even at that moment, I was like, oh, caught the chopsticks. Like, we didn't know exactly what this was, but we saw the meaning
and two
of him,
them falling together. And
right. Well, the idea of him quickly grabbing onto his life and being like, no, I'll catch and hold on to that.
Yep. Right.
But his denial of Matsuda's encouragements and affirmations all the way up until the end there. And
it's
and yet, like, he says, knock off that flattery, like I care. And then instead of responding in any way to that, he just goes, I'll collect tickets and help any way I can. Like, that makes me want to cry right there. And yet the show has so many other things it wants to get to that I'm like unable to process fully all the things that are happening here. And then in some ways we get actually one of the soapiest scenes in the whole show right here, with having the ex-lover that wanted to, reconnect with the person that she said she would have her revenge with. And then in the moment of, when they're actually, had their wholesome, wonderful moment, he actually, falls for her seduction here. And she even drops little things like, you're right, he's a lot like me. We're both people whose lives don't have track because of you. Like, the way she says that in the actual dialogue.
Right, she's guilting him.
She is specifically, she changes her voice. There's a little bit of venom in her voice that you just go, that's so wicked. And then...
right, and what I love about this, though, is that while it's something that is definitely, there's venom in there, right? It's then balanced with when Tsukuroku says, I'll quit Rakugo, I'll get a regular job, like, if it makes you feel, insecure and worried and whatnot, then, because you and Konatsu, you are my treasures, And then she says, don't go saying things like that. Why are you saying things like that now, right?
She's just basically, why are you saying that? Like, there's the emphasis on that being like, stay back, it's too late for this. And then he gets on his knees in the Rakugo pose. I'm sorry, I made my mind. I know he's just kneeling, but I just find it interesting that his final moment is basically a
right.
Rakugo
This is the
one.
Conclusion to his story.
His Rakugo story, exactly.
And the idea that it's because it's easy to hate someone when you vilify them, right? When they're just the worthless bum, whatever, blah 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 blah. But then he starts saying this, and she's realizing, I can't just have you be that person that I hate. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
And, oh, man.
And this is something I think I incorrectly deduced the reasoning behind when I first saw this, is that Shibahama I did today, I couldn't have done it without you, is not a thing of because you were physically there. No, it has nothing to do with that. It's because of the time that we spent with each other as a family, with Konatsu.
Yep.
Because of that time that had all that pain and hurt with it, he was able to do that Shibahama today. Right. And she then just has that moment of, like, her quiver there and says, Rakugo isn't something you can do alone, furthering the idea that the story was basically a reflection of the conversation that he had with Miyokichi, with Konatsu.
And the conversation he was having with himself in the moment. Like, yeah. And where's this coming from now? Why did you have to say that, right? Because now the one thing she's dependent on, right, her revenge, her hatred, her venom, he's cut out the legs from under her, right? And now she's like, well, what do I have to stand on? Yeah. And it's, man.
And it just hurts because he said this, and because he had, because he had so much love in his heart for his family, when she falls here, you see Kiku, and he's not moving.
Yeah.
He's not moving at all. Sukeroku, who was farther away, reaches her way faster than he could.
Yeah. And granted, Kiku was, like, turned the other way, but, I mean, but that also,
Still. Yeah. Just the idea that this is another thing that he's going to be blaming himself for.
Oh, yeah.
Is that if he and Sukeroku both, did this at the same time, it might have worked out faster.
Right, and you could say that this is an analogy for the fact that when Sukeroku was displaying the strength of, I will change, right? Right, my fate is not set in stone. Yakumo was the one that
was
swept away, right? Yakumo was the one that showed a bit of weakness, and maybe if he hadn't, Yeah. And oh man, it's tough because in a lot of ways this makes it feel like in some ways a more realistic story. Because originally I'm thinking this is Greek tragedy, right? Where it's going to end badly, it's going to end badly, and when it does end badly, that it couldn't have ended any other way, right?
Right.
Like it had to end this way. Not for some sort of plot contrivances or whatever, but because of the kind of people that are involved in the story, right?
Right.
That it has to go badly.
Yeah.
Here, it isn't like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was going well. It could have gone well. But because of, because the world doesn't care about your heartfelt, speeches and whatnot, this happened, right?
Yeah.
And Yakumo, if he had done something differently, could have avoided it. He had no reason to think that would have happened, right? There's no way that he could have predicted that the banister would break and all that stuff and whatnot.
Or just that she would even want to do this.
Right.
Kiku being...
Yeah.
I mean, not Kiku, but Miyokichi.
Right. Now he could have maybe been like, if he had not been swayed by her, right? But how is he supposed to know that, right? It's, it's again that element of weakness that didn't have to have this as a consequence, right? Mm-hmm. But that happened. And now because of that, he's going to be blaming him for, the little things, right? Where he's saying, if I didn't do these things, he'd still be alive.
Jumping back a bit to the Rakugo,
mm-hmm.
One of the things that in just the two stories that were told here, one of the things I found to be rather interesting as a contrast that was drawn up is the value of one's I'd say the value of one's effort or work or something about that giving some tie into the identity of the person doing said work.
Uh-huh.
There was a judging kind of aspect of yes, those that solicit sex is the duty of the rejected, the night duty of the rejected.
Which is funny because that's literally what Miyokichi does.
Right. Yeah. So, they're talking about basically the indulgences, which in some ways, these indulgences are the kinds of things that Sukeroku does as well.
Yep.
You could say that these things that Sukeroku chose led him to then doing his story after this one here, which is the story of a man's redemption from things that would be vices that would keep a man, I would say, rigid and immobile, or lazy, or whatever word you want to say here. But there's this aspect of moving that you brought up earlier in the discussion that I think is rather important here, because when he steps onto the Rakugo stage here, Sukeroku, oh wait, I've skipped over it. He's basically saying, like, I haven't felt this dignified in quite a while. He's like, yeah, I haven't looked this dignified in a while.
Mm-hmm.
And he's trying to, establish rapport with the audience. And as he's saying, believe it or not, I was a storyteller back in Tokyo once, talking about the things that he'd do, tied to his identity. And once he says, do I look it? No. Either way, it doesn't feel right. He takes off the thing that was kind of restricting his, his movement, his identity, or what have you.
Right.
And then tells the story of how a man basically changes.
Right.
And this man needed to be saved. He needed someone to come in and basically rip him away from the things that he was stuck to.
Oh, yeah. And the whole idea of in the story, the 48 Ryo, where there's this incredible gift that he's been given. There's no reason why he in particular should have this.
Right.
But he has it.
It's just a chance of fate.
Right. that basically I feel like that's, I mean, it can mean all kinds of things.
It can mean all kinds of things. Totally.
You know, Rakugo, Konatsu, you know, whatever, right?
Yeah, and it's the relationships
exactly.
of this. Yeah.
Yep.
It's his life, basically.
His life, and all the wonderful things that he didn't deserve that came his way, right?
Yep. Now the stuff in the show actually hits me because
right. Yeah. And
because of those connections, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he starts to squander it, right?
Yep.
But that's not the end.
Mm-hmm.
And in the story, his wife hid away the money. Right. Sure. Yep. Now, there's the parallel to him leaving Rakugo behind for a while, mm-hmm. right? But there's also this idea that, well, okay, no, hold on. I was going to say that it's never truly gone. The thing is that it can. It absolutely can.
Oh.
It absolutely can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. To bring things back to personal examples, the boys that we took into our home, I know everyone says, like, oh my God, they were so talented and, you know, blah, 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 all this stuff, bright future and everything. Whenever people are talking about, you know, like people that die or people that they, you know, they're basically trying to tell the story of how they knew someone, right?
Okay.
But there were things that I would see my foster brothers and do that were amazing. Were absolutely amazing.
Right.
You know, ways that they would push themselves or wouldn't even need to push themselves. Things that would just come naturally to them. And you know, crazy stuff. But now it's lucky if they are talking coherent sentences a lot of the time. Those kinds of things that came naturally to them, I know for a fact would absolutely not come naturally to them now. Now, maybe it would be something where they could reclaim it, right? You know, get back to that point where they can get the Rakugo back, get the Ryo back, you know, whatever it is. But there does come a point where Mother Nature, you know, the coldness of existence basically comes in and slaps you upside the head and says, too late, right? But it doesn't have to be that way, right? And you don't know when it's too late until you actually try, until you really try. And in the case of Tsukuroku here, if he had been given a bit more time, he would have made the actions, you know, he would have followed through on what he said. We could tell looking at him, right? Miyokichi could tell. Yeah. Or at least she was pretty sure she could tell, right? Mm-hmm. And that's what I feel like makes this the true tragedy, is that after Tsukuroku goes through all this, mm-hmm. and Miyokichi and everything, and he's at the point where he's changed. He has truly made the decision, and I feel like those kinds of decisions where you're actually changing something about yourself as a person, those don't happen a lot.
Usually, no. They're really early on, if at anything.
Right. They're either really early on, or they're accompanied with a lot of pain and a lot of, like, in something that you desperately want that you're moving towards. Right.
And they're not always good.
Yeah. They're not even necessarily always good. Right.
Yeah.
Because if you could change like that any time, you're not really changing. Sure. Right. And there are plenty of times where we put on that kind of change because we need to do something, right?
Oh, sure.
You know, we're
situation calls for
something. Situation calls for something, but we're not really changing something. We're adapting. We're putting on a temporary mask in order to address the situation at hand, right? But this was a crossroads. This was a fork in the road where Tsukuroku put a stake in the ground and he says, from here, things will be different, and he meant it all the way down to his core, right? Those do not happen often. And the fact that he was able to make that decision, and yet he wasn't able to prove it to the rest of the world, to the people around him.
He didn't live long enough.
Because he didn't live long enough. Like, that is the true tragedy. Mm-hmm. Because he did change. And And if not for this one moment, it would have been better.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it didn't go that way.
I want to bring up also something that I've found to be rather pointed in the past about Yakumo, is that he has this, like, I don't know if there were specific points where they brought it up, but there's this aspect of him that he wants specific things.
Okay.
As a character. Of course he does, right?
Uh-huh.
But there are things that he wants that he oftentimes, I would say, doesn't really think about what's necessary in order to make it happen.
Okay.
He actually just goes and starts making the effort to make something happen that he wants. But there is a cold detachment that he has sometimes towards the feelings of others.
Sure.
That allows him to sometimes ignore them because it doesn't come into alignment with what he wants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's something so alien about that, and yet so human. I don't know how to describe it. I would say that the thing that they used in the show primarily to describe that is the Rakugo, where he was a Shinigami.
Yeah.
That, like, you know,
right.
There was like a countdown of like this doom coming, and like he personified that voice in a really creepy way when he would use that. But it was these times when he wants, you know, all four of them together. He wants everyone to be under the same roof in Tokyo. He wants the family back together.
Yeah.
He wants Sukeroku back, and in some ways Sukeroku responded positively because what Yakumo wanted was exactly what Sukeroku kind of needed.
Mm-hmm.
But Miyokichi and what she wanted, he never really considered.
No.
Because I think in some ways this was the example of his coldness, was that
sure,
he ultimately did all of this for selfish reasons. And I think that this is the true perfect flaw of his character, that I'm just barely able to kind of connect certain strings of things together to make a picture of it.
Mm-hmm.
But the feelings of these other characters were such that they, in some ways, were brought to their own. They were each able to make their choices at the pivotal moment that showcased their change, their transformation, if you will. Yakumo just kind of got to watch it happen indirectly through his actions.
Right. It's something where I feel like this, I mean, it makes a lot of sense from a storytelling perspective. He couldn't have everything resolved for himself internally here, because otherwise there wouldn't be a season 2.
I mean,
right?
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Not really, right? So this is just showcasing, you know, highlighting again for him and for us where he's going to be after all of this, why he's that old man, you know, and
filled with regret, waiting to die alone.
Yeah, exactly.
I just like saying that, guys. Sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to bring up that there's this aspect of Yakumo here where I think it's very easy to look at him in this situation and realize how much he's blamed himself now over the decades since this event. How much he's lived with shame and sorrow and probably anger and all these emotions that he's probably frozen dead over the course of decades because they serve him. They don't serve him at all. And I think it's an easy analysis to call Yakumo a selfish character in certain circumstances, because it's like everyone's selfish in some ways, right?
And his is a very particular kind, but that would be an injustice to say that that's all that it is. Yeah.
So I wanted to showcase where it was in this instance there that there are these little things that I saw, and one of them that I think was really, really played off, and we'll never get to see the resolution of it because now Sukeroku's dead, but that was him giving him the Yakumo, the dress, the kimono, the specific one there, and he just puts it on him, and he's like, this is specifically the what does he say here? This is Master's Motsuki. A Yakumo should wear this. Right. And he just kind of smiles. Think of it as a memento. I'm glad I brought it. It looks good on you. And they literally do this look where Sukeroku has this look of like, oh, and you don't get it. Yeah. Like you really you really don't. I don't want this.
Right. And it's something where yes, Bon is absolutely doing that from a place of selfishness because he wants to make things right. And I feel like in this episode, everything that he's doing is an attempt to try and make things right. And
which is to bring everyone back, in his opinion, is to bring everyone back together.
Sure.
Because everything was wrong once they were separated, so if they bring everyone back together, then everything will be made right.
And one of the issues that his guilt is bringing into this is that because he feels so guilty, he also sees himself as the solution. Right?
Yep.
Because if you think about it, guilt, big time guilt, that actually comes from a place of pride as well. All kinds of other places too, but also pride, because it's basically saying that I was the one who was responsible for whatever reason, even though a lot of people were probably responsible, but it's taking that all upon yourself, which then the corollary of that is then I must fix everything.
I.
Right.
Selfish.
And it's not, and there's aspects of it that are definitely selfless because you're trying to think of other people and do things the right way. And in a lot of ways, I almost feel like Miyokichi actually being able to seduce him when he finally gives in, it almost doesn't even feel like it's something out of his own desire because of how distant Bon is from his own sexuality in general, right? It almost feels like it's something where it's a kind of recompense that he's trying to pay, where he's basically saying, it was because I spurned you that a lot of this stuff happened. I'm going to try and undo that, right? And maybe...
So I'm going to give you what you want.
I'm going to give you what you want, and that'll fix everything, right? Except it doesn't, because it's not about that, right? It's about something that she needs to do. She needs to save herself. She needs to come to the decision. And you don't make tough decisions like that when it's easy. You make tough decisions like that when it's hard. When it's really, really hard.
Yeah. And I wanted to continue this thing with Sukeroku real quick before we get back to that, but that's just that you see it, and maybe I didn't see it like at all in the beginning here, but just the fact of how quickly he goes to taking it off when he actually starts performing. Just showcasing that it really was something he didn't want. And then at the final scene, he realized, after doing the Shibahama, the point right before he took the thing off and basically spoke from the heart, he speaks from the heart here and says that you mean more to me than Rakugo.
Yeah.
You mean more to me than the thing by which, Bon wanted. Obviously, Yakumo and Bon is super important to Sukeroku here. But, it's just these little things that make you realize, okay, he's not even really looking at her there. This is something where he's so detached from this specifically here that even when he surrenders and kind of gives into her here, he says, why must a person's nature be so foolish?
Right.
You can take this both ways. You can go, he's talking about his own nature, which I would say is the most obvious one here, is he's saying, how could I have been so foolish as to mess up this much? Again, making this all about him.
Right.
Or why must a person's nature be so foolish with her, which I think is like very rare, like unlikely what he's actually talking about here.
Well, I think it could also be the different aspects of his own foolishness.
Okay.
Because there's and I feel like that comes from a place of why exactly did he give in to her requests, right? The final thing was her mentioning of how you hurt Sukeroku.
Yeah.
Right? And that Yeah, it's tough because he still thinks of him like they're all fools in their own ways, right? And yet there are the points where they're not. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, those points didn't line up properly.
Right.
Right? In many ways they did, but in a lot of ways they didn't.
Yeah.
And it's all going to just add to the bonfire of everything that he's going to be torturing himself with over the next several decades.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand why this is a lot of people's favorite show, because this is something that I could spend months just kind of watching the individual characters go along their storylines. Just pull one character and just watch all their scenes and everything that has to do with them, and then just spend time studying them.
Yeah,
there's so much in here. I almost feel like in some ways the one thing about this episode that I am legitimately like, oh, I really would have liked to have her live, was actually that Miyokichi died here. Oh. Because I feel like there were a few underlying currents of her character that only got lightly touched upon here in her final seconds. And literally her last line is, what is it, darling? Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is her who says that, right?
Yep.
Yeah. In that, she realized what was important too. Oh, no.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
She starts apologizing. Yeah. That's right. That is, like, there's so many things that could be in that, and we have only to guess based on the things that came before as to what is packed into this apology. Mm-hmm. And I hope she's not dead. I hope they pull something, even if it's a bit ridiculous, that she's paralyzed from the waist down, or something realistic that somehow she survived it. That either he pushes her against like an awning or what have you as she falls down there. She breaks her arm. It's a very small thing. I don't think so either.
Yeah, but
well, yeah, because then Konatsu would probably end up with her, so it's definitely that she's dead. But I just love that we got at least a good amount of resolution for Suki.
And as far as last words, like when I think of times when characters have died in stories and things like that, there are a lot that I really appreciate. But when they do something like saying I'm sorry, or whenever they're doing something that is not focused on themselves, trying to take care of someone else, even if it's saying I'm sorry that, I did this.
Because it's apologizing to someone else.
Right, it's apologizing to someone else.
Okay.
I absolutely love that, because I feel like that's a way that you can have the equivalent of the sacrifice without actually having a sacrifice. Because oftentimes sacrifices are too big to really mean anything, or in order to like sympathize with it, because
sometimes
it's too big, right? And it's too much of a cliche at this point, and you really need to figure out how to do it in order to make it feel worthwhile. But when it's that someone has literally come to the end and their thoughts are of someone else, that is one of the most beautiful things ever. So I love that they did that here. It's absolutely fantastic. And I love the way that they had them die, because originally when that happened, I was a little bit disappointed, because I was thinking like, but it's so cold, right? Where's the, okay, they fall and they die, but now that I think about it, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It totally does, right?
Yeah.
And yeah.
All right. So, y'all, next episode is probably where the real crying is going to happen, because Konatsu.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready for that. But if you're ready for that and you want to watch the next episode's reaction right now, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full-length timer reactions there. And all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us and the community there about this show, about anime in general. And you can talk with Jacob about his book that he wrote.
Yeah, so I wrote a sci-fi novel called Battle Lines. It's very character-driven and stuff. And it's great. It's on Amazon. Link in the description. Hardback and ebook, whichever works best. Go check it out.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.